Timex has been busy in the last couple of years. Busy reissuing older models and literally just going to town on variations of these reissues. What's wrong with that? Absolutely nothing, because as much as I don't like vintage watches, I actually love vintage inspired watches. So all eyes on Timex now, because the watch that we're going to talk about today is not the only model that they've reissued. Links into the description box below. Next to that, like and subscribe button if you want to check out the rest of the other reissues. The watch that we're going to talk about today is an addition to the Marlin lineup, and it has 1960s chronograph written all over it. Now, the 60s were great if you ask me, because the 60s gave us some iconic chronographs like the Heuer Octavia or the El Primero, just to name a couple. Now, I'll never get a chance to even touch any of those two watches mentioned, so hell no, this little Timex takes me back there, or makes me feel like I'm wearing those every time I put it on. And the fact that this is only around $200 and makes the deal even sweeter. Now, what sets Timex apart from the crowd with these new releases, it's the sweet spot pricing, hovering around the $200 mark. Below that, you're diving into the realm of Chinese knockoffs, and above that, you're wading through a sea of established giants and rising stars in the watch world. So if you ask me, Timex hits that perfect balance, offering quality and style without actually breaking the bank. But what about the chronograph? What's so cool about the Timex Marlin Chrono? Well, for starters, it's the way it looks. So on first glance, you wouldn't actually tell that this is a Timex. What does a Timex look like if, well, you ask? Apart from the case shape, which is pretty common for a vintage inspired watch, and the fact that a chronograph was the last thing I was expecting in the Marlin lineup, I wouldn't place this anywhere near the range. This particular model shares the 3912 indices with a model from 1969 called the Viscount, but not many people know this. I'll put a picture somewhere. To me, when you say Timex chronograph, my mind goes immediately to the Timex Weekender chrono. But like overall, this is good because those vintage racing inspired elements do actually give it its own identity, so to speak. The proportions are modern day, which makes it relevant to the present. It does open it up to the wide majority of modern day wrists. And by that, I don't mean that people before had smaller wrists. I mean that people before used to like smaller watches. What I mean is that the 40mm case will suit pretty much everyone, even me with all my 6.3 inches in diameter. And I love that Timex pretty much achieves the perfect balance. Pair that with that lug to lug, which is just below 48mm. The lugs do angle downwards, so this will wear pretty much perfect even on smaller wrists. If you think it can't get any smaller than this is how it looks on my wife's wrist. She doesn't know this, but I genuinely think that it suits her. And if you don't mind, I'd really appreciate it if you just don't tell her that, because if she finds out that I know that it suits her, she'll take it off me, and I don't want that. But looking at the bigger wearing perspective, this will work with pretty much everything. Even with that domed acrylic crystal, it would work with shirts, beach walk shorts, formal, but it won't work with a hazmat suit. That's a random thing to pick in. Yeah, don't wear it with a hazmat suit because you can't see the watch and it'll probably... But what about the construction? What does a $200 get you from a big known brand such as Timex? Well, we don't typically expect a lot of watch from a brand at this caliber and at this price point, especially when $200 doesn't actually get you much of anything nowadays. But we have decent finishing on the all 3160 stainless steel case, all polished finish, which typically is harder to do, which increases the price of the watch, but again, decently done, and it suits the watch perfectly. It's very consistent throughout, and it does give the watch a more premium look, especially in combination with that crystal. Regarding that polished surface, I hear some people that might say that, oh my god, it attracts fingerprints. Oh, seriously, how often do you touch your watch? Why would you even touch your watch that much? And in God's name, why are you looking at it to see if it has fingerprints. The crown at the 3 is just push-pull and it is unsigned. Now, we'll talk about the functions later when we have a look at the movement. We only have 50 meters of water resistance, which again is fine, I guess. Not the style of watch to have more, and I wasn't actually expecting it. I have a diver for that. And even with 50 meters of water resistance, never in my life with all the watches that I had, I've actually had any water in them. So this is something that is fine. It's just perfect for me just to wash my hands, and I'll keep it at that. As for the crown not being signed, I really don't particularly mind because it's $200 and I look at the dial and not the crown. That just doesn't tell me the time, it just adjusts the time. And it being quartz, I don't need to adjust the time that often. So let's just move on. Now let's talk about that dial because this is where all the magic happens, as they say. The sort of sunburst gray with the applied vintage Viscount indices mentioned earlier really takes you back. Now they have a few other colors which are more playful, I guess, but this is the pick of the bunch for me. I love the old new look. And speaking about those indices, I do think that these are the main elements that give the dial its character. They're raised and they do stand out. Does everything look crowded for the size of the dial? Not really, but the outer edge where the tachymeter lives gets a bit distorted in different angles because of the way that crystal is curved. Again, is my OCD triggered knowing this? No, because I have no idea how to use a tachymeter and never in my life I found myself needing to use one. So it's nothing. The 3 subdials are properly legible, situated in the traditional chrono layout, also with a date window at the 4:30. The date window breaks a bit the lines, and as much as I love having a date function, this time it could do without, as it does ruin the overall flow of the layout. Overall, on the dial segment, I do have 2 main problems. Number 1, the crystal covering it, well, the dial segment, but number 1, the crystal covering it is acrylic. To me, acrylic is fine, but this will eventually scratch and it's nothing that a bit of polywatch can't fix. And I love, again, the vintage sentiment, but I cannot remember the last time I sat down to polish an acrylic crystal. But at least you can still remove it versus mineral, which will stay scratched until the end of time. And number 2, there is no lume. Where the hell is the lume? This is my 3rd watch and I cannot give a P-lume score. But still, I have to stay in character. So in proper scientific terms, if you decide to risk it and sleep with this on at night and feel like going for a pee, well, just keep it in. That's what they used to do in the 60s. Let's move on and talk about the heart of this bad boy, because you'll be surprised to find that it is not the VK63 movement, contrary to appearances. It feels like one, it moves like one, and therefore it's not. At least according to the internet. This is powered by the Epson YM12A movement, which to me was a complete surprise, as I must admit, I didn't know this movement existed. I didn't think actually anyone would dare to replace the VK63/64 movement with anything, but there you go. I cannot tell you exactly why they made this choice, but what I can say is that it has a stated accuracy of plus to minus 20 seconds per month, and it has a battery life of 5 years. Now, it could have been anything inside, because to me the design is the appealing part, and I never use the chronograph function anyway, as much as I love it, or actually I don't use it at all. It gets point on the operational part, as it does have that mechanical feel when operating these pushers. And again, it's fine. I've had worse chronos, the Myotas, which didn't have that function at all. So it's something that I can live with. And lastly, I want to talk about the strap. We have this blue genuine leather strap with black stitching and also with quick release. My recommendation is to take it off this and put it on something else instantly, because you need something that is a bit softer and thinner and with a bit more character, and something that, you know, is deserving of the style of watch that it is. The watch deserves something to complement the racing look, and also something thinner. And with that, guys, let's draw the line and see what conclusions we have here. I really do like the mindset shift that Timex has gone for here, and it's really making the brand stand out in a positive way. As for the watch itself, at $200 to me, again, I've said this before, this is a no-brainer. You have heritage, you have originality, and you have looks. And again, it's the Timex name. Would you pay $200 for a Timex? Yeah, because this reissue is well worth it. With that, guys, that marks the end of the video. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about Timex and this whole shift and this whole reissue movement that they've gone for, and what you think about the Timex Marlin Chrono. Click a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. So thank you very much again for sticking around till the end of the video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.